I am Daniel Lucas,
And this is Mick, the Doctor of Digital.
and welcome to Music 101. Music 101 is created to empower music itself and legendary icon in the music industry. And today we have again another great episode, another week. So, Mr. Mick, what will be our topic for today?
Oh, yes, I think this should be fun. So, I'm going to introduce the country music evolution. So, it was a really great article by Alex Hopper, and I thought this is a great kicking off point to talk a little bit about country music. So, in terms of introducing it, there's an evolution. Country music is a genre that has been evolutionary since its outset. From oral tradition to megastars, country has lived many lives. Certain tracks help to showcase the story of country music as a world renowned genre. Naturally, this list will not be exhaustive, but the ones I've included on this list and talk about today did their fair share in making country what we know it is today. The evolution of country music has been marked by a series of innovations and transformations from the early days of Appalachian folk to the modern era of pop infused country crossover. One of the most significant developments was the rise of the Nashville sound, which emerged in the 1950s and 1960s. This style, characterized by its polished production, string sections, and smooth vocal harmonies, helped to establish country music as a major force in the music industry. Artists like Patsy Cline, Jim Reeves, and Eddie Arnold were among the pioneers of the Nashville sound, and their music continues to influence country artists to this day. The 1970s and 1980s, when some of us were in broadcasting, saw the rise of outlaw country, a movement that rejected the slick production of the Nashville sound in favor of a raw honky tonk style. Artists like Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings were among the leaders of this movement, which helped revitalize country music and pave the way for future generations of artists. The 1990s and 2000s saw the emergence of alternative country, a genre that blended country with elements of rock, folk, and punk. In conclusion, artists like Garth Brooks, Alan Jackson, and the Dixie Chicks were among the most successful of this era, and their music helped to bring country music to a wider audience.
Oh, I love this Dixie Chicks. So country music, thank you
A lot of
so
people
much.
do.
Yes, country music. Thank you
I
so
like
much for
chicks.
sharing to your part to the world. So, Mr. Mick, who are the early influences of country music?
Yeah, I'm not making up this name, but Eck Robertson, that's his first name, and the
Are
Fisk
you
Jubilee.
sure?
I'm positive. I mean, I didn't. That's his real name. And the Fisk Jubilee Singers should be mentioned in this regard. They were the early influences. So, where else to start but a classic like Swing Low, Sweet Chariot by the Fisk Jubilee Singers? Their rendition of the classic spiritual Swing Low, Sweet Chariot became the first commercially viable recording of its kind in 1909. This feat became something country historians look to when discussing the earliest moments of the genre. Spiritual music is one of the foundations of country music, from the themes of Christianity, which still run rampant in country today, to the melodies that early country artists adapted to make their own southerly compositions. One example is the Carter families. I'll say more about them. Little Darling, Pal of Mine. Country fans have a lot to thank spirituals for. As noted, spiritual music laid the groundwork for the genre, influencing themes, melodies, and even instrumentation. So the Carter family's Little Darling of Mine is a great example of how spirituals were adapted and reworked into country music. The song's use of harmonies, storytelling, and folk like melodies are all nods to the spiritual tradition. I'll have more to say about the Carter family since they are really important to the evolution of country music. In any case, the lyrics of Swing Low, Sweet Chariot themselves are a testament to the power of faith and the longing for a better life. The song's message of hope and redemption continues to resonate with listeners to this day. For country music fans, it's essential to acknowledge the debt owed to spiritual music. The genre's roots run deep, and understanding this history can enrich our appreciation for the music that we love. The Fisk Jubilee Singers are a renowned American a cappella ensemble that originated at Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee. Founded in 1871, the group was formed to raise funds for the university's music department and to promote the rich cultural heritage of American spirituals. The Fisk Jubilee Singers quickly gained international recognition for their powerful, soulful performances of traditional spirituals, which they sang with precision, passion, and emotional depth. Throughout their history, the Fisk Jubilee Singers have been a beacon of cultural preservation and artistic excellence, inspiring generations of musicians and music lovers alike. Arkansas Traveler, this is by the forenamed Eck Robertson, 1922. In the early 1920s, the Victor and OK recording companies, and that's spelled Okeh, OK recording companies, made a leap to record early country artists, making them trailblazers in the genre. Prior to this time, country was more or less an oral tradition. Country songs were typically passed from family members and friends in a community. These companies, though, took notice of them commercially, jumpstarted the movement that continues today. One of the first recordings done within these companies was Arkansas Traveler by the fiddler Eck Robertson. He brought the sounds that were familiar to many people in the US to those who hadn't had the fortune of hearing them before. So this is a guy who was the first person to record a commercial country music record, and he did this in company with fellow fiddler Henry Gillian, and they went to the Victor Talking Machine Company in the New York studios, and Eck and Gillian, Civil War veterans from Oklahoma, after entertaining veterans, decided to go to New York to the express purpose of making records. And there, what they did is they spent about 10 days in the city, and they were in full dress, Confederate uniform, and flashy Western regalia, and turking with their cases all over would be striking even today. They recorded Arkansas Traveler and Turkey in the Straw, another famous song. And what they had done then was recording other songs like Sally Gooden, Ragtime Annie Solo, all of which are well known in country music. They were released, and these were the first commercial records ever released by a country musician. So, in conclusion, X stayed in New York for 10 days, finally returning home to Vernon, Texas, full of memories and stories of the big city.
Yes, and thank you for those cool memories. So, Mr. Mick, who were the first country stars?
Well, among the first country stars, we'd have to include the aforementioned Carter family. Gene Autry, and of course, Hank Williams are the standouts. So, Bury Me Under the Weeping Willow Tree by the Carter family, 1927. They were an early act that caught the attention of an eager public. Their famous three-part harmony showcased an intrinsic facet of country music that would continue to bolster the genre well into the middle of the centuries. They were a huge commercial success, with many of their recordings selling thousands of copies. In fact, their 1927 recording of Bury Me Under the Weeping Willow Tree was one of the best selling records of the year, with over 100,000 copies sold. This level of success was unprecedented for a country music act at that time and helped to establish the Carter family as one of the most popular and influential acts in the genre. Their music had a significant impact on the development of country music, as their unique blend of traditional folk songs, Appalachian ballads, and original compositions helped to shape the sound of the genre. The Carter family's popularity extended beyond their music sales, as they also became a beloved and iconic act in the country music scene. They were one of the first country music acts to tour extensively, performing at festivals, concerts, and radio shows across the United States. Their music was also featured on popular radio shows such as the Grand Ole Opry, which helped introduce their music to a wider audience. The Carter's family's legacy has endured long after their initial popularity, with their music continuing to influence generations of country music and fans. Today, they are widely regarded as one of the most important and influential acts in country music history. Then, of course, there's That Silver Haired Daddy of Mine, That Silver Haired Daddy of Mine by Gene Autry in 1931. He had his first hit at the beginning of the 30s with that song, and Autry helped to garner country music a wider audience with this track and his many other fan favorites. Moreover, the narrative aspect of the song is a cornerstone of country music that many songwriters still lean on today. He was named the Singing Cowboy, and was an American singer, songwriter, actor, musician, and rodeo performer who gained fame largely by singing in a crooning style on radio, in films, and on television for more than 3 decades, beginning in the early 1930s. He was owner of a television station, several radio stations in Southern California, and anybody in Southern Cal knows him because, of course, he was part of the Los Angeles, California Anaheim Angels Major League Baseball team from 1961 to 1997. From 1934 to 1953, Autry appeared in 93 films, and between 1950 and 1956 hosted the Gene Autry Show television series. During the 30s and 40s, he personified the straight shooting hero, honest, brave, and true, and profoundly touched the lives of millions of Americans. Autry was one of the first important pioneering figures in the history of country music, considered the second major influential artist of the genre's development after Jimmy Rogers. His singing cowboy films were the first vehicle to carry country music to a national audience. In addition to his signature song, Back in the Saddle Again, and his hit At Mail Call Today, Autry is still remembered for his Christmas holiday songs, which we featured on Christmas show on this podcast, most especially his biggest hit, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, as well as Frosty the Snowman, Here Comes Santa Claus, and Up on the Housetop. He's a member of both the Country Music Hall of Fame and the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame, and the only person to be awarded stars in all 5 categories on the Hollywood Walk of Fame for film, television, music, radio, and live performance. The town of Gene Autry, Oklahoma was named in his honor, as was the Gene Autry Precinct in Mesa, Arizona, not far from where I am sitting, as a matter of fact. Last but not least, Hank Williams. Hey, good looking. He was a country music legend who left an indelible mark on the genre. Born in 1923 in Montgomery, Alabama, Williams grew up surrounded by music, with his mother being a singer and father a musician. He began writing his own songs at a young age and was discovered by a local radio station, which led to his first recording contract. Williams's unique blend of honky tonk, blues, and gospel music quickly made him a star, with hits like Hey Good Lookin' and Jambalaya on the Bayou becoming country music staples. His music was characterized by his distinctive voice, which was both raw and emotive. His songs often dealt with themes of love, heartache, and hard living, which resonated with audiences across the country. He was also known for his prolific songwriting, penning over 1,000 songs during his lifetime. Williams's music was not only popular with country fans, but also influenced rock and roll, with artists like Elvis Presley and the Beatles covering his songs. Despite his short life, Williams left a lasting legacy, with his music become to be celebrated and covered by artists to this day. Tragically, Williams's life was cut short when he died in 1953 at the tender age of 29. His death was a shock to the music world and was mourned by fans and fellow musicians alike. Despite his untimely passing, Williams's music continued to thrive, with his songs becoming country music standards. In 1955, Williams was posthumously inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, and in 1987, he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Today, Hank Williams is widely considered as one of the greatest music country artists of all time, and it becomes a part of American musical heritage. His influence can be seen with many artists were inspired by his unique style and songwriting. Some of his direct influences include Jimmy Rogers, also known as the father of country music, Roy Acuff, Jimmy Davis, Lefty Frizzell, Merle Travis. Not only that, but of course, in his own family, continued to be a country influence, because Hank Williams Jr., also known as Hank Jr. or Bocephus, also was a music star. And then a notable descendant of Hank Williams is Hank Williams III, also known as Hank III. So, both in terms of other artists and within his own family, Hank Williams is absolutely crucial for the evolution of country music. In conclusion, all these artists, including his children and grandson, carried on the legacy of Hank Williams, keeping his music and style alive for new generations of country music fans.
So, Mr. Mick, what was the Nashville style of country music?
The outro style is there are subgenres that should be mentioned in this regard because a couple subgenres come right after Hank Williams. Bill Monroe is the most famous representative of bluegrass and is so important that Elvis Presley recorded the tune as the originator of rockabilly, along with Carl Perkins and Johnny Cash. Blue Moon of Kentucky by Bill Monroe in 1947, bluegrass began to be the sound of the times. And the main purveyor of country music at that time, Bill Monroe, along with his Bluegrass Boys, released Blue Moon of Kentucky in 1947. It would be a shining example of this burgeoning subgenre that was building momentum behind the scenes for a decade. And this song was so important that, of course, Elvis Presley recorded it, Blue Moon of Kentucky, in his own style. So, as a subgenre, he began the influence of rockabilly. And rockabilly is a genre of music that originated in the 1950s in the southern United States, particularly in the states of Tennessee, Arkansas, and Louisiana. It's a fusion of country, blues, and rhythm and blues music characterized by its strong backbeat, distinctive guitar riffs, and energetic vocals. And it generally has a combination of elements: strong emphasis on the backbeat, on the second and fourth beats, use of electric guitars with a distinctive twangy or slapback sound, simple, catchy melodies and harmonies, and lyrics that focus on themes of love, heartache, and rebellion. There's a strong emphasis on showmanship and stage presence. Rockabilly was popularized by artists such as Elvis Presley, Carl Perkins, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Johnny Cash, all who got their start in the genre. Rockabilly's influence can be heard in many later genres, especially, of course, rock and roll, because this is what burgeons rock and roll right after this period of time. Overall, rockabilly is a unique and energetic genre that combines elements of both country, traditional country, blues, and rhythm and blues to create a distinctive sound that is both nostalgic and influential. Some songs that should be mentioned here: Honey Don't, Carl Perkins, 1956, and Ring of Fire, Johnny Cash. There was country music before Elvis Presley and country music after Elvis Presley. The introduction of rock and roll to the masses infiltrated every corner of pop culture, even the typically tame corner of country music. Prior to the King, country music was more or less subdued and notably primarily acoustic. After Presley shook up the music world, country artists began to plug in, creating a hybrid called rockabilly. And one of the trailblazers of this double duty style was Carl Perkins. And that's, of course, a song like Honey Don't. Jerry Lewis is known for his rockabilly sound and his many songs that fit the genre. However, one of his most rockabilly songs is probably Whole Lot of Shaking Going On, released in 1957, considered one of his signature songs. It's a high energy song with a strong backbeat, distinctive piano riff, and memorable vocal performance by the ever wild, the killer, as he's known, Jerry Lee Lewis. Song's lyrics are typical of rockabilly, themes of love, passion, and rebellion. It's a great example of the genre's emphasis on energy and movement. It's a huge hit for Lewis, reaching #1 on the Billboard charts, becoming one of his most enduring songs, and it's still widely regarded as one of the greatest rockabilly songs of all time. Must listen for anyone interested in the genre. Although Johnny Cash would prove to be more than just a rockabilly artist, many attribute the subgenre's early success to the Man in Black. In conclusion, his title track, Ring of Fire, is perhaps the most beloved rockabilly influenced track.
So those are the subgenre of country music. And
Mhm.
then what was the Nashville style of the country music?
Sure. After that period of time, it's one of the most significant developments was the rise of the Nashville sound, which emerged in the 1950s and the 1960s. Representatives of the sound are Patsy Cline, Buck Owens, and Charlie Pride. One of the most famous songs, of course, is Crazy by Patsy Cline in 1961. Nashville, Tennessee became a hub of country music in the 40s, and in the following decades, a new Nashville style of country music began to develop. Unlike the rough and tumble ways of bluegrass, the Nashville sound was polished and pop leaning. Many artists began to earn mega stardom off of this sonic revolution. One such artist who earned fame in this era, became a crossover artist, was the female trailblazer to boot, was Patsy Cline. Crazy actually penned by another country artist, Willie Nelson, became one of her biggest hits. And you might know the lyrics: crazy, I'm crazy for you, feeling so lonely. I'm crazy, crazy for feeling so blue. I knew you'd love me as long as you wanted, and then someday you'd leave me for somebody new. So we have that sort of heartache kind of sound. Then, of course, there's Act Naturally by Buck Owens in 1963. And then 60s and 70s, the West Coast began to stake their claim on country music, and one of the main voices in the Bakersfield sound was Buck Owens. Though originally from Texas, his move to California influenced his career greatly. The easy breezy nature of the Bakersfield sound can be heard in Act Naturally. The song was so influential, even the Beatles, with Ringo on lead guitars, recorded the tune. So they have played that for many years along with some other artists. And then also there's Just Between You and Me by Charlie Pride in 1967. He became one of the first Black performances to become a country star. Though many Black artists contributed to the rise of country, few earned the same prestige as others. In conclusion, Pride not only became a shining example of what the genre could do if widened its scope, but earned the genre crossover success in both pop and gospel.
Yes. Thank you, Nursery Style. Thank you so much. So, Mr. Mick, what is the outlook country?
Sure, I remember that well. So, in the 1970s, and the rise of outlaw country, a movement that rejected the slick production of the Nashville sound in favor of a raw honky tonk style. Artists who had actually been recording and writing records, like Willie Nelson, are really important for outlaw country. So, artists like Nelson and Waylon Jennings were among the leaders of this movement, which helped to revitalize country music and pave the way for future generations of artists. Song that should be mentioned here is groundbreaking Me and Paul, Willie Nelson, 1971. Willie Nelson, along with a fair few friends, began to give country its edge back in the 70s with the outlaw movement. The outlaw sound was characterized by gritty instrumentation and lyrics about living life hard and fast. It stood in stark contrast to the prim and proper Nashville sound that had reigned supreme for decades. Though many songs could end up on this list, here's an early outlaw cut to be mentioned: Me and Paul. Willie Nelson plays a vital role in post rock and roll country music and past the Nashville style. Texas born Nelson is an icon of the 70s outlaw country music, favoring a stripped down style that could both evoke desert highway vistas, famous song On the Road Again, and initiate the most intimate of conversations, another of his songs, Blue Eyes, Crying in the Rain. He has collaborated with some of the biggest names in the genre, whether that was Merle Haggard or Waylon Jennings, Johnny Cash, or Chris Christopherson in The Highwaymen, and written some of country music's most popular songs, including what I mentioned earlier, Crazy, made famous by Patsy Cline. Nelson's outlaw ethos has continued to manifest itself in all sorts of surprising ways. He's become America's most visible pro marijuana activist and Snoop Dogg's unlikeliest duet partner. Another song to be mentioned, of course, is Looking Back, Texas, Back to the Basics of Love. Arguably, Waylon Jennings' best outlaw country song is Looking Back, Texas, Back to the Basics of Love. This was a song released in 1977 along with Willie Nelson, and it's considered one of Jennings' signature songs. The song is a tribute to the town of Texas, and it's a celebration of the simple country way of life. The song's lyrics are important to mention because they're a reflection of Rent Jennings's outlaw country philosophy, with themes of rebellion, independence, and a rejection of the commercialism and superficiality of mainstream country music. The song's title phrase, Back to the Basics of Love, is a nod to the idea that true love and relationships are more important than material possessions or social status. The song's music is a blend of country, rock, and blues with a driving rhythm and a memorable guitar riff. Jennings's vocals are strong and emotive, and his delivery is both authentic and charismatic. This song is widely considered one of the greatest outlaw countries of all time, songs of all time, and it's a must listen for anyone who loves country music. He was an American singer, songwriter, musician, and Jennings is best known as one of the founding members of the outlaw movement in country music. He started to play guitar at the age of 8 and first performed at age 12 on KVOW radio, after which he formed his first band, the Texas Longhorns. Jennings left high school at 16, determined to become a musician, and he then worked as a performer and DJ in Arizona and Phoenix. In 1958, here's another connection to rock and roll. Buddy Holly arranged Jennings's first recording session and hired him to play bass. Jennings gave up his seat on the ill-fated flight in 1959 that crashed and killed Holly, the Big Bopper Richardson, and Richie Valens. So other than that, Jennings would have been gone with another time, but he formed a rockabilly club band, the Wailers, became the house band at a club in Scottsdale, Arizona, recorded for independent label first, and then later on for another record label, but didn't achieve success until moving to RCA Victor, taking on a good manager, negotiated significantly better touring and recording contracts with him. And once he had creative control at RCA, he released the critically acclaimed albums Lonesome, Ornery, and Meal, and Honky Tonk Heroes, followed by hit albums Dreaming My Dreams and Are You Ready for the Country? So, as one of the major figures in outlaw country, he was featured on his 1978 album White Mansions, performed by various artists, and also been in films and television series, including Sesame Street and a stint as the balladeer for the Dukes of Hazzard, composing and singing the song's show theme and providing narration. He also then struggled later on with cocaine, but then got over it, joined the country supergroup The Highwaymen with Willie Nelson, Chris Christopherson, and Johnny Cash. They released 3 albums between 1985 and 1995. And then he also released his own successful album, Will the Wolf Survive? In the late 90s, he toured less, spent time more with his family. His appearances began to be limited by health problems. And in 2001, he was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. 2007, posthumously awarded the Cliffy Stone Pioneer Award by the Academy of Country Music. In conclusion, these are among the greatest outlaw countries of all time and a must listen for anyone who loves country music.
Yes, one of the greatest outlaw countries. Thank you so much. So, Mr. Mick, when did country become cool and crows over the pop?
Yeah, there's some crossover. Country became more popular, more mainstream. So Amarillo by Morning, George Strait, 1982. In the 1980s, with the urban cowboy idea, country music became and more important to a general audience. Country began to take center stage in popular music, earning a wider audience than ever before. And one artist who certainly capitalized off that trend was George Strait. Strait's deep, syrupy vocals earned him a fair share of hits, including Amarillo by Morning. And he's a country music legend known for his traditional country sound and iconic hits like Amarillo by Morning and All My Exes Live in Texas. If you like George Strait, you might also like some other similar artists like Alan Jackson, Travis Tritt, Clint Black, Randy Dave Travis, Tim McGraw, Kurt Urban, Brad Paisley, Darius Rucker, Zach Brown, and Eric Church. And was pop became more country and became more mainstream. These are all artists that share similarities with George Strait. So, in conclusion, in terms of traditional country sound, strong songwriting, distinctive vocals, and country had become cool.
Definitely. So, what is the alternative country, Mr. Mick?
Sure. In the 1990s and 2000s, this saw the emergence of alternative country, a genre that blended country with elements of rock, folk, and punk. Artists like Garth Brooks, Alan Jackson, Shania Twain, Toby Keith, Carrie Underwood, Tim McGraw, Taylor Swift, and the Dixie Chicks were among the most successful of this era, and their music helped to bring country music to an even wider audience. And I'll mention a few examples of this genre. Honey, I'm Home by Shania Twain, 1997. And this was a further encroachment into the pop world. Artists like Shania Twain earned significant crossover success, blurring the lines between what is country and what is a stellar pop song with a Western tinge. Honey, I'm Home is not only an example of a country track with immense appeal across genres, but also is emblematic of the stance female country singers would take in the modern era. powerful vignettes of womanhood. How Do You Like Me Now? Keith. Toby Keith was the highest grossing country artist from 2000 to 2009. He started to build the foundation for that legendary run in 1999 with How Do You Like Me Now? This vengeful track, which remains one of his calling cards, further helped country's spotlight grow. Many contemporary country artists have Keith to thank for opening doors for them to gain international success. Jesus Take the Wheel, Carrie Underwood, Tim McGraw, Taylor Swift. The mid to late 2000s saw a crop of country stars become successful from listeners who previously didn't want anything to do with the country genre. Artists like Carrie Underwood and Taylor Swift transcended country music on a massive scale. Perhaps more so than ever before, these artists didn't need the vehicle of the country machine. In conclusion, their songs were beloved for what they were, not because country's fans were consuming anything and everything that had a twang.
Definitely. So, Mr. Mick, more recently, what characterizes country music?
Some songs and things to be mentioned. Cruise by Florida Country Line, 2012. The 2010 saw country begin to incorporate hip hop elements to create what has affectionately more or less become known as bro country. Georgia Line was early adopters of this unique brand of country. Cruise gave the movement validity, becoming the first country song to be certified diamond by the RIAA. Looking back at the massive artists on all kinds of songs in the past who failed to grasp that achievement, you have to give credit where credit is due. With that, we also have songs like Heart Like a Truck, Lainey Wilson, 2022. The Western way of life has been gaining traction in the zeitgeist for the last decade or so. Lainey Wilson has helped to proliferate that movement. Wilson's catalog has brought back the Western style of music that has mostly been lost in the genre. Heart Like a Truck became one of Wilson tunes that is aiding country's rise to the top of the pop world in the modern era. That's it in conclusion.
Mm, definitely. So, how can we conclude a discussion about songs that showcase the evolution of country music?
Well, as we've explored the evolution of country music through the songs we discussed here, it's clear that the genre has undergone significant changes over the years. From the early days of country music to the honky tonk sound to the outlaw country music has always been a reflection of the times and the people who create it. As we've seen, the genre has incorporated elements from other styles, such as blues, rock, and pop, to create a unique sound that is both authentic and innovative. Through the songs we've discussed, we've seen how country music has evolved to incorporate new styles and themes while still maintaining its core identity as country. From the classic country sound to the more contemporary sounds of artists, country music has continued to adapt and innovate, always staying true to its roots. As we look to the future of country music, it's clear that the genre will continue to evolve, incorporating new styles and themes while still honoring its rich history and tradition.
Yes, indeed. Country music. Thank you so much for being part in the music genre. Country music is a genre deeply noted in storytelling, tradition, and heartfelt emotions, originating, as Mr. Mick says, in the 20th century in the southern United States. It blends folk, blues, and gospel influences, often featuring instruments like the guitar, fiddle, and steel guitar, and many more. So, again, country music. Thank you so much for empowering our music industry. So, Mr. Mick, would you like to plug in something?
Sure, if you don't mind. I am the Idea to Author Coach on Facebook. I help writers write books. I help writers sell books. You can also check out the Doctor of Digital podcast and, of course, the volumes that I have out there, Burning America and On Track Ian Hunter, both available on Amazon. Thank you so much.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Mick because if you support him, more books to come. And of course, please do listen to my other podcast, Food 101, and it's its fifth season with Chef Alessandro, one of executive chef in one of the five-star hotel in downtown Toronto. So please do listen, Food 101. So, Mr. Mick, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel. Until next time, Deus Volt.
More to come, people. See you soon. There's something wrong with our